let's just jump right into this. In today's explainer, we're looking at how a nation attempts a massive, ground-up economic reset. Specifically, we're zooming in on Nigeria and examining its incredibly ambitious, decades-long effort to break away from an almost singular dependence on crude oil. We're going to see how they're trying to transition into a diversified, globally competitive industrial economy. We'll break down the strategy, look at the physical implementations, and measure the real-world outcomes. It's a fascinating story full of sweeping policies, billions in investments, and some pretty complex realities on the ground. And this really poses the ultimate paradox, doesn't it? How does a resource-rich giant, a country that has historically relied on exporting raw crude while ironically importing its refined fuel and manufactured goods, actually pivot? How do you transform that system into an industrial powerhouse that manufactures its own products and creates domestic jobs? It is a monumental task for sure. So here is our roadmap. We are going to cover 1. The industrialization blueprint. 2. Mastering backward integration. 3. Megaprojects and implementation. 4. The non-oil export boom. 5. Structural hurdles. And 6. The road ahead. Section 1. The industrialization blueprint. Now, you can't shift the trajectory of an entire nation without a serious plan, and Nigeria has rolled out several highly ambitious ones over the last 2 decades. It started with Vision 2020, aiming to place Nigeria among the top 20 global economies. Then, following a recession, we saw the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, focusing heavily on power, rail, and agriculture. And that brings us to today's Renewed Hope Agenda and the National Industrial Policy 2025. The ambition here has scaled up dramatically. The goal is boldly set on reaching a $1 trillion economy by scaling exports and pushing manufacturing to contribute a massive 25% of the national GDP. Section 2. Mastering backward integration. So, big overarching policies are great on paper, but how do you actually execute them? Well, the STAR strategy that bridges the gap from a high-level policy document to the actual factory floor is a concept known as backward integration. Essentially, instead of a manufacturing company relying on importing its raw materials from abroad, which, drains foreign exchange and leaves them totally vulnerable to global supply shocks, they invest directly in their own domestic farms and local suppliers. They gain total control over their production pipeline. When you see this strategy play out in real life, it's pretty incredible. You have domestic agricultural inputs being directly funneled right into continuous large-scale factory production. This isn't just a theory. Our sources highlight that this reduces the need for foreign exchange, stabilizes the local currency, and creates a robust domestic value chain that actually fosters local job creation and technology transfer. It's a real game changer. Section 3. Megaprojects and implementation. Okay, let's move from the strategy board to the physical world. A prime example of this is the 2002 Cement Backward Integration Policy. Before this, Nigeria was importing millions of tons of cement. But by tying import licenses only to companies willing to build local factories, Nigeria achieved total self-sufficiency by 2012. We're talking 65 million tons of capacity today. But there's a catch. This protection resulted in a highly concentrated oligopoly. Just 3 private operators control the market. So while capacity is huge, prices and profit margins remain persistently high. Then we have an absolute behemoth of a mega project, 650,000. That is the refining capacity, in barrels per day, of the Dangote refinery. To put that into perspective, this single private facility far exceeds the combined capacity of all of Nigeria's state-owned refineries. It's designed to finally solve the historical irony of Africa's largest oil producer relying on imported fuel. This project is a masterclass in what industrial transformation looks like at scale. Our sources indicate it generates roughly 29,000 jobs. It commands over 43% of the market share, and critically, it's projected to slash Nigeria's petroleum import expenditure by nearly 29% between 2024 and 2025. That keeps an immense amount of capital inside the country. And it's not just oil and cement either. The sugar industry followed a very similar path. Massive private capital is flowing into local agriculture to replace imported raw sugar. For instance, flour mills of Nigeria invested a staggering 73 billion naira to establish a 15,000-hectare irrigated sugar estate and a local milling factory. This is backward integration happening right now, pulling agricultural development along with industrial manufacturing. Section 4. The non-oil export boom. So, all of these strategies, the painful currency adjustments, the focus on local production, it's actually led to a historic boom in non oil exports. And the data is truly staggering. After a period of currency devaluation, non oil exports absolutely skyrocketed. We are looking at a massive 255% surge in 2024 to over 9 trillion naira, and projections show it hitting a record high of over 12.3 trillion naira by 2025. And where are these goods going? Well, Nigerian products are now reaching 120 countries globally. Powered by high-value agricultural commodities like cocoa beans, cocoa butter, and sesame seeds, the Netherlands actually sits comfortably as the top destination, taking in over 17% of total exports. Brazil, India, and Belgium follow right behind. Section 5, Structural Hurdles and Challenges. Now we have to look at the full picture here. Despite these massive wins, the overarching manufacturing sector currently only contributes about 8 to 10% to Nigeria's GDP, which is significantly lower than fully industrializing economies. Why? Because the sector faces severe bottlenecks. The realities on the ground are tough. Pervasive insecurity and banditry, particularly in the north, are severely disrupting supply chains and forcing factory closures. Add to that chronic energy shortages, deep infrastructural deficits, and a really frustrating landscape of multiple taxes and constantly changing regulations. In fact, there's a quote directly from the National Development Plan that hits the nail on the head regarding private sector frustration. Imagine you invest billions based on a specific government policy, and then that policy abruptly reverses. You suffer massive losses. When rules constantly change, investors simply lose the confidence needed to commit the long-term capital required for true industrialization. Section 6. The Road Ahead. So, knowing all of this, how does the 2026 Renewed Hope Agenda plan to navigate these structural landmines and actually reach that $1 trillion economy? Well, the latest policy maps out 4 specific steps. First, lowering the cost of doing business. Second, deepening those backward integration linkages to agriculture. Third, improving access to single-digit industrial financing. And fourth, utilizing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to scale exports without tariffs. Which brings us to one final massive question laid out in our sources. As we watch this unfold, will massive implementations like the Dangote refinery lead to a genuine, broad-based industrial transition that lifts millions out of poverty? Or do they simply entrench the power of a few corporate giants? The policies are set, the mega projects are live, but the true test of Nigeria's industrial reality is really just beginning. And that's all we have for you in this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.